All right. It is another great one. Today is a short week for all of us. July 4th is coming up at the end of the week. I'm excited about it. Barbecue, some good sleep, good nap after that. But Amir, who do we have today?
Renard, with the 4th of July thing, I think this is a great way to introduce Canz, who to me is like a meta guy. He talks. You can. It's like a wide range. So I've known Canz for a little while, and I can tell you he's somebody who has a range, everything from talking about martial arts, which he has done in his past, and we'll get into that today, but also about things like how do you make a great human being. So I'm excited to get into the full range if we can today, Canz. I know we've got a limited time, but Canz, if you wouldn't mind introducing our audience in your own words and fire away.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today. Trying to describe myself is a weird thing, I think. I have zero talent, but I have like 100% weird experiences throughout life, which has gotten me to where I am, which is a co-founder of an open source AI startup called DataSQRL. I started out here about a year and a half ago, and it's been a kind of a dream and goal of mine to do this. I come from a very Brooklyn Italian family. You don't get more Brooklyn Italian than my family. I often say, there's Italian, then there's Brooklyn Italian, and you know the difference. I grew up in Brooklyn, moved to Staten Island when I was young, but in my formative years, moved to the Pocono Mountains in northeastern Pennsylvania. And that's where a lot of my story kind of forms, if you will. From there, went to Penn State for my undergraduate, got a job in Philadelphia right out of school. So I've been in Philadelphia for 20 something years now. I was Oracle certified, everything. Went to Gartner, went out on my own, then went to 3 successive unicorns, and hopefully I'm building my own unicorn now. In parallel, I did my MBA at Villanova, which is about 15 minutes that way. Did data science and AI graduate work at Harvard, and then did graduate work at MIT in quantum computing. In my formative years, I started studying karate. I kept on with it and won state championships. Got invited to the Junior Olympics, and somewhere in there was an all-star baseball player as well as a horrible, horrible wrestler. Now, if you ever meet me, I look like a mini fridge with muscular arms. It's because I'm about 5'0" and I weigh 210 pounds, and that's what you get with me. Uh, and For a few years there, I was in the top 5% in the world for CrossFit as well. So yeah, it's it's been a weird journey. So I hope that is helpful for our audience.
Kenz, I think that's a fantastic introduction. So, I mean, you and I have talked a lot in the past. So I have that added benefit compared to Renard in our call today. But I want to kind of pick on that thread a little bit more because, what I've learned about you is you're a person who has incredible range. And I mean that from, talk about your physical engagement with sports and athleticism all the way to the academics and entrepreneurship to boot today. So you've explored the edges of where most people just don't want to go. How does that mindset develop? Like, what is your method that brings you to this comfortable point where you can say, you know what, I want to go do this? Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, it stems from fear, believe it or not. I always say that people are either running towards pleasure or away from pain. And from a very personal story, when I was in college, I call it quasi homeless. My father's business tanked while I was going into college, and I, we ended up losing our house. I ended up, either staying at my fraternity by the grace of God. I ended up staying in school. at Penn State. So I ended up staying with a girlfriend or two. Ended up oh, couch surfing, really. But I said to myself from that experience, I was like, I do not ever want this to happen to me again. And oddly enough, it almost happened to me in 2008 with the financial crisis, because I had a side real estate investment company and was over leveraged and was on the verge of bankruptcy when I had a mentor and my old boss helped me out a little bit, but it also helped me realize that I had to take action. So it really stems from fear and developing that need and desire for security. So that's where it stems from, oddly enough. You wouldn't think that, but it kind of puts that drive, that fire under you to make something of yourself and to succeed. It's the only way I could describe it.
Wow.
Harkening it back to the athletic piece, there's a big component there. From baseball to martial arts to wrestling, if you know anything about these sports, if you start off, you kind of suck at the beginning. And that's really formative. It's really important to suck at the beginning, because if you do that and you kind of embrace that, oh, I'm in the learning mode, and you work through the uncomfortableness of it, you get to a place where you're learning and you're growing. I look for the edges of those things. Like you said, if you go to those edges, you learn things that other people don't learn. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that is a your walking example of commitment. And that's something, as leaders, we think about a lot. Do we want to commit to something or not? Because it's a trade-off at the end of the day. But it sounds like you've taken that to the extreme for yourself. So if I can just kind of ask you, you've got some hard experiences behind you to drive you in the direction you have, but not everybody's going to have that same experience. What would you share with folks, if you dig into this wisdom toolbox of yours? How can we become more committed, more comfortable with becoming uncomfortable?
Oh, I think there's several things that you can do. And one of the very first things is mentors. And I talk about this a lot, as you know, Amir. Finding a mentor who's been there, done that, or it's just a peer who you could say, hey, I see you've done this before. What was it like? What should I expect? That's the first thing. The second thing is I personally journal a lot because it helps me process my thoughts and feelings. I've done it consistently for over a decade now, every day, 10 to 15 minutes, first thing in the morning. So I do a brain dump and it kind of clears my head for the day. I'll also say something that maybe a lot of people don't want to hear, and that is finding a partner who is a cheerleader for you. I find that my success over the last now almost 20 years is because of my wife, who thinks very highly of me. And she's, the first one to call me kind of, awesome when I don't feel awesome. So it's those things. It's not just one thing. It's a collection of things together that help me through, especially right now in the thick of it, when I'm starting my own company and trying to get customers and talking to venture capitalists and doing all the things that need to be done to make something of nothing.
It's amazing. I know we had a guest not too long ago, in fact, last week, where we talked about the importance of family and having a partner who is very, very supportive. And I know Renard has an opinion about mentorship too.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna agree about having the Yeah, we talked about it last week, and it was the backbone of most businesses is family. Having somebody, like you said, who's rooting for you, you achieve so much more because you have that backing. Like, I know Amir, myself, we have great family that backs us, that cheers us on, even when we think that we're not at top of our game. It was like, no, you're great, you're doing great. To have that outside. I want to go back a little bit to what you said. You were almost homeless twice for the most part. I resonate with that because I went through that. I went through that because of a hurricane. Hurricane took everything from me. I had to start over in Dallas. How did that, in a sense, since for me it strengthened me to want to do more, not go through that experience again? How did that strengthen you going through both of those things that are very traumatic for somebody? How did that strengthen you to move forward?
Yeah, I learned different things from each event, if you will. And the first thing I learned was kind of that I don't want to go through this ever again. But the second time, what I learned was the only way that you'll get through it is to go through it and not stop, like the Winston Churchill quote, if you're going through hell, don't stop, keep going, right? But coupled with that is action. If you're going through hell, stopping and looking around is not advised. So when we were going through, because I was with my wife, were just married, and I was in the thick of it. Something that kind of just jumped out to me was, if I'm going to get out of this, I need to take some action. So that's what I did. Actually, that's what we did. And she actually got laid off. I was kind of at a company that we were doing kind of cutbacks, and some of us were taking pay cuts to keep the business afloat. And I had an opportunity come up. I started talking to people, and I didn't want to leave my company because I really loved it. And she wasn't really keen on working at a big, power utility company, but the opportunities were there, so we had to take action, and we did. And it was a grind to get through it, but we did. We kind of looked at where do we want to be. We reverse engineered that, used the inverse mental model, if you will, and we figured it out. So, the first one was the first event was a driving force. The second event was a real, well, I've been here before, and I think I know how to get out of it, and that's taking action.
Mm. I like that. I like that. Taking action, that hits me, in the heartstring. Just, that piece of your story, and understanding, like, hey, at the simplest form, I don't want to go through this again. I don't want us as a family to have to go through that again. And it strengthens you in order to keep moving forward. And segueing a little bit more, like when you're talking about martial arts, of that being comfortable being uncomfortable. I try to tell people that when I'm at the gym, like you said, you're gonna suck a little bit. You're gonna start
Yeah.
off, it's gonna be terrible for you. You're gonna hate it. Most people, I always say, even jujitsu, do not even make it the first year because they don't understand being humble. Like, you're gonna be terrible at this. You're gonna get beat up. You're not gonna understand why someone smaller than you is just beating you up on a regular basis, and that helps you understand determination and moving forward. And
Yeah.
determination is another part of you doing entrepreneurship. Now you have data squirrel. Now you've done this before. What excites you about being an entrepreneur and doing these startups?
Yeah. I think there's a few things that really excite me, but for the most part, it's funny. I was at the third unicorn I was working at. Uh, right before I joined, I said to my wife, I feel when I join these startups, when I'm interviewing at these startups, I feel like I'm helping someone else achieve their dream, which is great, right? To be a part of that, when I was at Confluent, I kind of felt that because we went through an IPO there. I went through it, and that was an incredible experience with amazing people. And I remember the day we rang the bell on the NASDAQ, and I said to myself, "Oh, our CEO and the two other founders, like this was their dream to get here," and it was very humbling to help people live that dream. But when I joined that last startup, I said to my wife, I've been helping people live their dream. Maybe it's time, maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, I'll stay here, and maybe I'll go off and make my own dream and live my own dream. I was there for like 7 months, didn't work out. Wonderful people, wonderful company, just wasn't the place for me. So my wife, in her wisdom's she's like, take a year off, figure out what you want to do next. And I bounced around. I was doing a lot of talking to people, a lot of advising of AI startups. And an old colleague came along and is like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm like, hey, I'm writing a book about this right now. It was one of those fortuitous synchronicities, if you will. And I said, well, it's my time to do this. My time to see if I can make this dream come true. So that's kind of the push that has led me here.
So tell us a little bit about your dream then, Canz. I mean, what's the vision? How is DataSQRL going to change the world?
Yeah, I like starting with what I believe. I've been in and around data for decades. And I think data is too hard to work with. And I believe you should get information from your data without needing a PhD. And it happens my co-founder has a PhD. And I always tell the story to customers and whoever. There's probably a 90% chance if you open up your phone to interact with a retail app or a financial app, you're dealing with something that I've helped personally deliver the data infrastructure underneath for. And having gone through so many implementations, it's just brutal. And I understand why. There's a lot of engineering concepts that go into the underlying data infrastructure. But when you look at the explosion of data and these consultants talking about how data is the new oil, yeah, that's all great. But getting oil out of the ground is extremely complex. I have worked at oil and gas companies. It shouldn't be that complex, especially with data that's just so abundant. So we believe that you shouldn't need a PhD to get information from your data. And that's kind of the driving belief behind DataSQRL. So when you think about it from that perspective, that's my vision. That you could be a business analyst or a doctor or a lawyer or a CEO or a student, and you can come to DataSQRL and literally type in, hey, I want to take this piece of data and merge it with this piece of data and actually break down data silos and bring it together without having to understand, oh, that's a data stream. That's an event stream. That has sub-second data at massive scale and different formats to it. Oh, and that's a relational database table. And that's a mainframe file. You shouldn't need or care that's what that is. You should know that, oh, my customer data is here, my customer data is here, my customer data is here, and I want to join it to see a really comprehensive view of it. And then the AI in our system goes off and builds that for you because it understands everything that's underneath and joins it for you. So those data silos and those, like, just getting the information from your data is my belief and my vision. It's sorry to go long-winded on that answer, but it's kind of something that's very near and dear to my heart. Having done this for so long, I like starting with why I believe that's my vision.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that you have a recognition of what your why is and you're chasing after it. I think many of us would relish the opportunity to have what you have, candidly speaking. So just to pick on that a little bit more, if I'm an executive sitting and receiving a pitch from you, Canz, how would you convince me that looking at AI and data in the way that you envision it is the best way or the right way?
I typically start with my pain. And I tell a story how on Christmas Day, a few years back, I was supporting a federal customer who was going through a very interesting, severely interesting use case. I was helping with a segment of the data pipeline. And I tried to tell my team to take the day off because it was Christmas Day. And I happened to be working with a team from my customer who's mainly Indian. And it was just, they don't celebrate Christmas, so it was a day off. So like, hey, we're going to work because we need to get this done. And as we were working through that, I was handling the Kafka piece. And if you know anything about me, I'm not terribly technical anymore because I basically spent the last decade and a half being a psychiatrist to people. And as you rise to the organization that you're in, you notice this as well. You become very much less technical and much less of a subject matter expert, and you become a psychiatrist for people, a team psychiatrist, if you will. So I was dealing with one piece of the pipeline, and we had 3 or 4 other pieces of the pipeline we had to get done. I would have to kick off my process and wait hours for the rest of the team to come back and say, oh, it's broken here at step 2 of 50. I don't want people to go through that anymore. And if you're dealing now with the complexity of AI and trying to merge it with your data plumbing, the complexity doesn't grow linearly. It grows exponentially. So our vision, again, is to eliminate that. And having run a global team of data scientists, 150 data scientists, they spend 80 to 90% of their time messing around with data plumbing just to get the right data into the model. Whereas if they would have spent all their time, or the vast majority of the time, on the model, they would have delivered value faster instead of having to be a data plumber and then a data scientist. So that's kind of my talk track there in thinking that. But that's how I typically kick it off, is kind of honing in on the pain. Because really, if you're not solving something, what are you really doing?
Yeah. It's either painkillers or vitamins.
That's it. Again, pain or pleasure.
No, I think that's good. And your model is based around AI, and of course, you got some people who love AI right now, some people who are scared of AI right now,
Right.
and you got some people who are just in the middle. They're in between. For you, we all know that AI isn't going anywhere. How are you making people feel more at ease knowing that AI is the backbone of the sense of what Data Squirrel does?
Yeah. So, and we're a very specific type of AI. It's called neural symbolic. It's a very academic term. And I tell you what it means in my speak, which is very dumbed down. I try to relate everything like I'm an 8-year-old. But it's the connective tissue between data and AI. Enterprise data specifically has a lot of rules to it. Like, what's a customer? Believe it or not, when I was at Gartner, that was one of the most complex questions I can ask any of my customers. So when I'm trying to put people at ease, because I get this question a lot, especially from my family, because I know I've spent time at Harvard with doing data science and AI, and then at MIT with quantum computing, a big focus of that was, okay, how does this impact artificial intelligence? So you'll start hearing in the next 3 to 5 years around QML, or quantum machine learning. The way I try to describe it to make people feel at ease is very simply this: electricity. If you think about what happened when we introduced electricity to the masses, what happened? Well, we got to do things more efficiently. Industries changed. I think a lot of people are really worried about, oh my God, am I going to lose my job?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer to that is yes. However, there'll be other jobs created that you can take moving forward. Think about the horse and buggy when the car was invented and introduced. Almost overnight, that industry, the horse and buggy industry, disappeared. And a new industry was created. So I think we're going through that. There's a really interesting book called The Fourth Turning that talks exactly about this, how these shifts in culture, history, economics force us to change. And I think we're going to go through a rapid succession of a couple, not only AI, but it's already happening, once you see these companies make quantum computers
Mm-hmm.
more scalable, more reliable, that's when the world is really going to change overnight. So the way we do medicine, I make this prediction on several friends and coworkers. In the next 5 to 10 years, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you may get sued for not using AI. So I think what we're going through is that turning,
Mm-hmm.
where, you're not a horse and buggy driver anymore. You drive a car. So I liken it to electricity. It's going to enable us to do so many more things, to be so much more productive. And hopefully, as with all things like this, uh, increase the quality of life worldwide.
Yeah. I like that. I say the same thing when it comes to AI for the most part. Right now, it's taking a lot of low hanging fruit for you right now. It's not going to completely take your job right now, but I said the person who does not adapt to it and learn it, that person who knows it is going to take your job right now.
Yeah,
That's where we are right now.
yeah,
I like where AI is going, especially in the medical field. I've talked about this a lot. That's even though I'm more in the tech space, my interest is more where is it going to go in our medical field. But I want to transition back to something. You are a black belt in karate. Tell us about that story. Why karate? How has that molded you into the person you are today because of that?
yeah. It started with my uncle. He was in the army. He was taught self-defense, as you typically are when you're in the military. And one day, uh, I come from a big Italian family. Again, a big Italian, stereotypical Brooklyn Italian family, like 51st cousins, just loud. Loud is like our standard volume. Like, if we're yelling at you, we're talking to you. We're not upset with you. He pulled a couple of the boys aside and he was just kind of teaching us how to, throw punches and throw kicks and holds. So me being a a ferocious reader, even when I was very young. I thought this was the coolest thing. I started watching karate movies. I started reading a tremendous amount about it. Whatever I can get my hands on, I just started reading and reading. And finally, when I can do it, when I can go to a class, I started taking it and I excelled at it in spite of my size, which I thought was really interesting. So I transitioned, I studied Ishinryu, which is an Okinawan style. It's very hand heavy, very hand and punching and striking focused. And when I got to the Poconos, I kept on with the Okinawan or Ishinryu style karate for a few years. And then I went to Taekwondo. And that's very kicking focused, if you know the style, which I believe Amir, you do, is very much so.
I know that quite well.
Yeah. And that's when I started to win a lot of championships. And the reason being is because I'm short, I'm stout. So I was always in a heavier weight class. And the guys who are in heavier weight class are typically a lot taller than me. I didn't break 5 feet tall until I was like in the 10th grade. I didn't go very much far beyond that either, by the way. So I had to use what I had, right? And if you're a big guy, you have long arms, long legs, you have a bigger striking radius. So I would just step in to that radius and make it really hard for you to get your full range of motion. If you know anything about full range of motion in any sport, it's the key to hitting a baseball well. It's the key to, punching well and so on. So if you shorten that distance, it becomes a benefit to you. But there's something else that I really learned, and I've taken it through my entire life. And we talked about early on sucking, if you will, of learning. But it's that underlying discipline. I'm going to come to the gym today. I'm going to come to the gym tomorrow. I'm going to suck today. I'm going to suck tomorrow. I'm going to suck the next day and the next day after that. But at some point, I'm going to get better. And it's because of that discipline. Oh, I come to the gym, I warm up. I do this exercise. I do this formation. I do this, then this every day. I took that, applied it to wrestling, applied it to school, applied it to work, applied it to writing. It's just that discipline of just every day going at it. Very formative. And it's helped me immensely.
I
No,
like that. The one thing I'm going to say, when you talk about discipline for it and gonna suck for it, I just want to tell our audience that practice is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be terrible for you. It is supposed to be grueling. You're supposed to, it depends what if you're doing baseball, football, whatever, even jujitsu. Practice is supposed to be hard because then that means when you go to the tournaments and you go train, that's the easy part. It's just like basketball. Basketball practice is supposed to be terrible for you. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be grueling. So when the game comes up, it makes it easier.
That's
That's
right.
what I wanted to tell our audience.
Yeah, and that's Sun Tzu talked about this. The more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in wartime.
yeah.
And you can hear, for instance, if you go on YouTube and look for Julian Edelman, the former Patriot slot receiver, he talks about this. He talks about how Belichick's practices were grueling. If you hear anything from Marcus Luttrell, who wrote the book Lone Survivor for Operation Red Wing, which Mark Wahlberg starred in that movie Lone Survivor, he talks about how SEAL training is much more grueling than actual gunfights. It's that mindset that if you really train really hard and practice how you play, when you get to play, it becomes much more enjoyable and much easier.
Yeah. I'm reminded of one of our earlier guests, where he said, uh, calm seas don't make sailors, right? So, it's so true that we all share this common background of having been a part of sports at a very competitive level. And, one of the things I tell parents when, I train at the dojo and teach at the dojo is that put your kids, let them, just explore the edges of how much discipline and accountability they have to their instructors. Because when they grow up to be adults, we want them to be leaders because they are future leaders at the end of the day.
I would add one more thing to that, and it's so horrible for me to say this, but I need to say it. Get punched in the face,
Yeah.
physically punched. I know it sounds horrible, and it could be kicked, it could be hit. It sounds horrible, but in reality, it's something that you need to be comfortable with. Because when have you saw a fight where you don't get punched? And I talk about it from a more a meta perspective. When you get hit and you learn, oh, okay, I got hit, it almost feels good. You hear football players talk about it. You like when on game day, you're all nervous and you're excited, and as soon as you kind of get contact with the other player, like that dissipates, and you're like, oh, you're everything, all your training just takes over. So expect to be hit, expect hard times. It'll make you better if you understand that. And it's not the most eloquent way to put it. I get it, but it's an important lesson which I tell a lot of people.
So I do this with the kids, Canz, in the dojo, where I will have them stand. So you're probably familiar with Kyokushin as well, where they train with their arms in front of themselves. You're in a horse stance, and there's another partner just punching you in your abdomen, and you go at it faster and faster while you control your breathing. Well, that's not really a common practice in Taekwondo, but I borrowed that from Kyokushin because I had a friend who used to train in Kyokushin, and we would spar and train outside of our schools. And I thought that was a fantastic way to get you to become comfortable with just maintaining your breath work as you are trying to, diffuse the situation or your opponent.
Yeah. And it's so applicable to so many other places in life. I'm a really big believer in that.
Well, like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face.
Exactly. Exactly.
So have you been punched in the face, Cans?
So many times. These are store bought. I have lost many a tooth from years of just of course sparring and just genetics. So that's why I got this nice, wonderful smile from my doctor, Dr. McKenna in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
They make mouth guards too. I'm just
I do know that now. Yeah. So yeah.
That's great. So we talked about mouth guards. We talked about, Mike Tyson, etc., being punched in the face. And I get what you're saying. If even boxers, if I remember when I was studying, I was going to do MMA at first before, and Amir doesn't know the story. At first, when I started martial arts, I wanted to be an MMA fighter. I saw the UFC, etc. And my first coach told me, he said, "What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna throw like 60 jabs in your face." And at first, I didn't understand why. And he said, so you can get used to someone throwing a punch in your face without you jerking your head back or blinking 100 times. He said, so for the next week, I'm just going to throw jabs in your face to you to get used to it. So going what Canz is saying, I understand where he's coming from. You have to get used to that and understand. So then you start moving your head. You're not scared of someone throwing a punch in your face anymore. So just
Yeah.
like I said, just like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah. Well, it's really important for entrepreneurs as well because everything is going to be on fire. Everything is going to be on fire and the floor is lava at all times, at all times. And I struggle daily. I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And you have to just realize these things, you're going to have these challenges and you have to just be kind of hardened to them. So getting, the figurative getting punched in the face is very applicable when you're an entrepreneur.
So, stemming on that, I want to ask a question. Since
Yeah.
what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur for the first time? They've been thinking about it, they've been going to work full time, but they're thinking about taking, like you say, that dream that they have and going forward. What would you tell somebody?
Especially on LinkedIn, you can find a lot of people who failed at it. So first off, talk to those people. I've used LinkedIn to an amazing benefit. I know a lot of people look at LinkedIn and they're just like, oh, people are trying to sell me something. Uh, yeah, they are. But also, it's an amazing tool to connect with other professionals. And I bet you, if you talk to 10 people, 5 or 6 of them have failed at something like this, like starting their own business. And ask them what happened. What can you learn from that? And another thing I've learned, by the way, is if you ask for help, people will give you help. People are actually really willing to help when you are vulnerable enough to say, I need help. So learn from them. That's the first thing. Uh, the second thing is don't listen to hustle culture on YouTube. Everyone is on YouTube talking about, oh, it's the hustle, it's the grind. A lot of those people don't really know what it's like. Yeah, they might have made some money with it, but to actually create a sustainable, profitable business takes a lot more than daily motivation. So ignore the social media aspects, some of it, but use some of the social media aspects to connect with people who have been there, done it, and can tell you a lot of the battle scars that they have. And by the way, if people watching this, you can find me very easily on LinkedIn. And I've said this to Amir several times. I'll share it here. The most important thing you have is time, which is why I give it away to people very willingly, because it's the most valuable thing I have. And to me, that's a way of giving to people, giving back to people. So if all else fails, you can find me, and I'm happy to spend some time with you and tell you all the things I went through, and happy to tell you, oh, look out for that, look out for this. So that's what I would tell people.
So I'll echo that point that, I've interacted with Canz and he's definitely been very generous with his time. But Canz, I want to make sure that everybody realizes who's listening to this, that what you just now said is very powerful. We think about money as being one of the most valuable things we can give away, and that's how we add value. But it's actually time, to your point. And listening to you say giving time away because it's the most valuable thing I have, I think is a very powerful statement that I think we can all learn from.
Thank you. I truly believe it. That's why if you contact me and you're like, hey, can I spend some time with you? I'm typically like, because it took somebody to do that with me. I was like, I'm so thankful for this time that I have with you because I learned so much. Think about it. Think about some of the people the people you hear about most throughout your life. Like, what would you give to have an hour with Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or Albert Einstein or somebody from history that, Tesla? These people, you spend an hour with them or even 5 minutes, they can change your perspective on so many things, which is why I think it's the most valuable thing you can give.
That's so true. We try to hoard it though.
Yeah, yeah.
So one thing I want to know, since we're talking about, you know, time and someone you want to spend time with, etc. Who was that first mentor for you through your journey?
A gentleman by the name of Tom Connolly. Uh, Interestingly enough, quasi homeless in college. Within a year and a half of getting out of college, I was laid off twice. After the second time I was laid off, I found this help wanted ad on, I think it was Monster, and I responded to it. And Tom was on the other end. He had a 2-person consulting team company. I was employee number 3, and I basically his right hand for about 8 years. Helped him grow that to a 200-person or something company. He ended up selling it to private equity later on. When I left to go to Gartner, as I was mentioning earlier, Tom was unbelievably tough on me. But the lessons I learned in those 8 years, I'm still like, even today, I think back to them. I'm like, oh, Tom busted my ass about this. Tom busted my ass about that. Matter of fact, almost every time I write a very important email, it takes me so long because Tom was such a stickler on grammar and getting to the point and making the person who's reading that email's time worth it. That today, it's funny, I'll send things to my wife who was a writer or is a writer, who went to school for writing, was an English major and comms major. I'm like, is this good? And she's like, and by the way, I used to write for the Harrisburg Patriot News and live.com. I used to write a college football blog, which was very popular about a decade ago. I was writing for them. I get so wrapped up in some of those lessons that he learned. And that's one of the lessons he taught me that to this day just sticks with me. So yeah, that was my first mentor, my first true mentor, who kind of walked me through, and very harsh lessons, by the way, but very, very valuable. And I couldn't pay. You couldn't buy that kind of experience with him. And he paid me well to get beat up every day.
The caveat to everything, you paid
Yeah.
me well. I love that. I love that. I think we've all had great mentors. I think it's a strong and it's a great thing to have. I always, even when I'm on other podcasts, I always mention a lot of people that mentored me because in a sense, I always say they didn't have to do that. They chose to do it. They saw something great in you, in me, my mentors, and Amir, etc. And they chose to like, hey, I'm gonna help you along in your journey. And I'm always grateful for that. I know you both are as well, because at the end of the day, they didn't have to. They could have just looked at you, be like, I'm paying you. have fun. We'll figure it out. But I love that the story of mentorship and how people had great mentors. And I know we're getting close to time and everything. So Cans, I always ask everybody, what's their theme music? So we have to know what's your theme music when you're in the office or you're at home. What gets you ready for the day?
It depends on the day. Okay, depends on my mood. If I know the day is going to be a tough day, I'll play something a little bit more upbeat. Again, I'm a child of the '90s, so and I'm from Brooklyn, so it's going to be Biggie.
Okay.
It's going to be something with Biggie Smalls. You know, feeling it. It's going to be Metallica. It's going to be probably Harvester of Sorrow or Creeping Death, two of my favorite songs by them. But my favorite song by them is Bleeding Me by far. Yeah, so it could really vary. It could be, Wu-Tang Clan one day. It could be Sarah McLachlan the next day. It really can be. I have, again, child of the '90s, so I have a very diverse and weird sense and love of music. And I tell this also. I am named after Michael Jackson.
Well, okay.
So, so some days it's going to be Motown because my mother was a big Motown fan. My sister's named after Diana Ross. And my brother's named after Joe Jackson. So, it could be anything like that. It could be Zeppelin. But if I had to choose, I'm going to whoop the day's ass. It's going to be Biggie.
I got you. I like it. I like it. I like the variety. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I love the variety. I'm a '90s child as well, so it could be. I'm the same way. Depends on what day. You might hear me hearing Wu Tang. It might be Biggie.
Yeah.
It might be Metallica. I'd had Counting Crows. The names go on about what I've
Uh,
listened to
I just
throughout.
listening to their new album, by the
Yeah.
way,
What
because I
what
love
what
them.
works? Yeah.
Yeah.
What works? I was like, whatever gets me ready. So I love that. So I will say, Cans, thank you so much for joining us today on Black Belts and Boardroom. It has been fun. I know, like so many others, we could go longer than this and talk about all day, especially when it comes to martial arts. But we thank you for joining us today. And one last thing before you go, is there anything you want to leave the Black Belts and Boardrooms audience before you go?
Yeah. I'll make the offer of my time. Uh, Reach out to me. If you're a fan of this podcast and you want to talk some more, or you want some clarification on it, on something I've said, if you want to make fun of me, more than welcome to. If you want to just pick my brain about something, you can find me. I'm happy to spend my time. Again, it's kind of my way of doing service to you know to those who I want to give a hand up to. That's the way I pay it forward, and I like being of service to people.
Now, that's the way to end a podcast. To our Black Belts and Boardrooms audience, we will see you on the next one.